This is a little thing I've been wanting to do for a while, talk about some of the comic art that I like and some of the artists I like. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Frank Quietly, and this penguin here is just so cool. And I wanted to show some of the detail work on it. Here's a scan from Brit Comics Art, which is Joseph Melchior, which is Frank's rep, and the original $7,000 currently. Is the best scan that he has up. I think it's a with the Quietly market. I guess I can give some opinions on the art. It's been up there for a couple months. 7,000 is probably about right. A little over market, but you shouldn't sell what you should get on eBay for anyway. And I think the market, with Quietly stuff, I've probably owned 50 pieces of Quietly stuff. Probably have 30 left, 28 left or so, and they're all most of the time I sell to buy a better one, a lot of the times, or trade or something. So I've had 50 touch my hands, but I probably always had about 30 as my max. Um, with this, the market, let's say if you get it for five, that'd be a great deal. It's probably worth five now, but I think in a few years it'll be worth 10. So it's pretty cool. It's the kind of the Danny DeVito inspired Joker. I love the creepy mouth on it. It's so cool the way he's cutting his eye over at you. Um, the fish in the pocket, the lapel is just so awesome. What Quietly does well, if you look at this glove, sorry for the blur, but I'm doing the best I can with these scans. There's the way he does the seams, there's like a pressure, there's a weight in the hand that's coming into the glove that's stressing the seams. There's a same with the skin on the penguin here. I just love that, the subtlety of the hair and the detail of the teeth. He can be so detailed and exact, but he can also have the correct drapery uh, on that bow tie there. And I think that's so interesting, or that fish just looks perfect. Even the cord on that monocle is great. So many people would just get lazy with that and it wouldn't be even, but that's just it's just so sharp and so crisp. I love that that's a fly fishing thing in his hat too. So there's just all these subtle winks, and it seems so simple, deceptively simple. You can just see the pressure in those buttons there too. I love that. And then when he goes into color, he takes it to the next level. This is the highest res I could find, but you can see he's just so aware of form. Like now the skin where he suggested a wrinkle, now it has a low light, a highlight. It's blended into the next one. There's a wonderful look in the eye. It's kind of red, It's dark, old spots that he was missing. You can see the highlight on the buttons, right? I love that. And there's probably a low light there, but the scan isn't that great. Even the black, it's like the perfect amount of black. It's clearly black, but um, there's still cast shadow work. He's got the fish looking like a fish now, with the colors and how they shine and reflect with that kind of oil slick look. And it's a really cool one. When I get some money, if it's still up, I'm definitely going to buy it at some point. Those teeth, man, look at those disgusting teeth. So good. The only downfall of this one is it's so creepy, it's hard one to display necessarily in your house. But I just think the subtlety work on it, the color holds of the hair there, that hair looks like a single strand of hair, over here. Just like he drew a little bit in color to really nail it. And I don't know, he's so aware. Like at the brim of the hat has a highlight, the cast shadow of the brim of the hat, how it falls over the nose and the cheek and such. I just think it's super cool. So yeah, the Penguin by Frank Quietly. If you're an art collector, I think it's a pretty good. I mean, it's an expensive pickup, but it's a good one. I mean, a DC villain, a classic shot. I think this one was written by Danny DeVito. I haven't read the issue. A big part of collecting is if the issue is going to be memorable. I feel like in today's age, right, it's hard to know what's going to be a classic run because so much stuff is put out, But it is kind of neat. I think these blood spots on the thing are interesting too, like those couple of dots, like he did eat a fish at some point. The nose hairs, the little divots in the nose, Quietly does that so well. And then even that um, glass, like the monocle, you can see he's color color held the brim of the monocle behind the glass, and I think that's so good, you know. And I would bet anything that he even highlighted that cord all the way up and down with a cast shadow under it and above it. And I don't know, you just to get that kind of care in comics, and like that cast shadow dropped under the bow tie. I mean, that's just perfect. You see both. We get a pointer here. You can kind of see both of these drop down here. This is clearly a surface that's cutting this way, so the cast shadow's cutting this way. He's got a rim light on the collar. He never overdoes this because it's clearly like, which tells you something about the texture. It doesn't hold a highlight, so it's clearly not leather, but it's still subtly done and tastefully done. Every wrinkle, like this area here, there's a highlight above that wrinkle as it divots in and up. He's just so aware of form. And when I talk about quietly a lot, one thing I talk about is like some of us are drawing at 8-bit, Chris Ware, and you can make that work. And some of us are drawing PS4. I feel like quietly is almost a PS10, like he is just his pixels, his awareness of form and shape when it comes to drapery, or and then obviously the style and the cartooning on top of it. That's clearly in reference a man for that drawing. He probably looked at Danny DeVito and then he cartooned it in his own way and made it his own. So you still get that wonderful cartooning language that I personally love with cartooning, is when things filter through an artist's mind and out of their hand. And I think, so many in comic books these days, there's so many cheats, so many poser models or something, or people tracing. And I just feel like quietly never does that. I'm sure he does, everyone probably does a shortcut or two. But I just feel like his cartooning is what makes him stand out. So on top of all of these kind of realistic, in their own way, it's realistic, right? This lighting or the precision, the reflective light, but then also the cartooning is there. So it's this perfect melding of like cartoony realism is what I call it. It's this oxymoron that kind of exists in its own world. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about his stuff. So anyway, if you got $7,000 and you want to go check out Brit Comics art, Joe Melchior is a great guy. I know he's over in the UK. He stops by Quietly's place sometimes. And from what I understand, Vin is selling less and less these days. He's doing really well from what I understand. And, obviously he did good working with Mark and Mark Miller, or Mark Millar, however you want to call him, with Jupiter's Legacy, and all those guys I heard got taken care of. So he's doing good. And when you're doing good and you draw this well and you're watching everyone else make money on your art, you probably don't want to sell as much, So they got this one up, and I think it's a pretty fair price. It'd be gone if it was 5. 6 is what you could maybe bargain to if you're a bargaining type collector, and 7 is a little over market probably. But you can't tell me if this didn't drop on Heritage that it wouldn't go for 8. Odds are it probably would. So I think it's super cool. If that story takes off, or if that ever becomes a thing, obviously it'd be even a bigger cover. So cool piece. I like it a lot. And this is something I wanted to do on my YouTube for a while. Me and Chuck Arnold are both quietly collectors. And we both bought mics, and we were saying, oh, we got to do this. We got to talk about quietly work. And he's got a huge collection at this point, and I got a pretty good one. And we were going to do our own pieces, but I figured just share some of the popular ones. And since this one's still available, and probably the best available that's been up for a couple months, I figured I'd talk about it. So yeah, the Penguin by Frank Quietly, I don't think it gets much better than that. It's so classic, so clean, and even the openness of this drapery, and then the intense detail, and it's all correct. There wouldn't be, if this is all pulled tight, it wouldn't be covered in stuff, and even these here, if a colorist got this, they might have only saw this or this little line, but he's always just, it's almost like that Leyendecker thing where he's almost drawing the negative of the circle, the suggestion of the negative shape, the negative of the volume of the thing is what he's drawing a lot of the times with a lot of these squiggles. And they might seem nonsensical, and guys like me and lesser versions of Vin Quietly, they can steal that aesthetic. They can take the icing A white cake. A lot of people say like me or Ramon Villalobos or Chris Burnham, we draw like him, but it's not true. Like it's like saying the best cake in the world that's ever been eaten. That baker makes the same kind of cake as the one at the local grocery store, and because they're both white icing, and a lot of people in comics, you can tell the house styles and stuff. They'll leech on to like a great artist, and they'll just steal the icing but not the ingredients. And I just think Quietly is working with some of the best ingredients. He's the best chef, the best baker one of them that's ever done it. And it's so easy as an artist to steal the mark making. And I think you can trick editors and you can trick readers, but in an artist's eye, my eye is he's just so far above, so far beyond everyone else. The way I looked at it was every time I thought I was close to Quietly, I got a little better. And more people would say, "Oh, it's like him. It's kind of like him, but it's more cartoony or more weird." I think you got to draw on your voice ultimately. But what I realized is it's like your belly's up against a 100-story building, and maybe fans are next to you, right? And you're looking up, and you're like, "Well, Quietly's not that far away." But every time you think you're moving up a story, and he's one story or two stories ahead, the artist also gets better, so they take a few steps back, and that gap actually gets larger as you step back, right? He's actually above the building, and you thought he's on the moon, and you thought you could get him on floor 67, and maybe you're on floor 13, when you start out. But so like when your belly's up against it, and you don't really have maybe the art awareness or knowledge of the ingredients that goes into his pieces, you might think that you're close, or a normal reader might think you're close because you're using icing, the same icing. But when you step back, it's like biting into that cake. And when you bite into that cake and you taste it, it's a whole different world. And I think artists, with knowing underdrawing a little bit more, and the better we get at it, the more you appreciate the guys like Vin, like Art Adams, the guys that where their styles maybe are mimicked, but what they're actually doing is kind of untouchable. So anyway, I wanted to rant a minute about one of my favorites, take a little art break today from Prepping Axel or John Files, and talk about who I would argue is the GOAT of modern comics, Frank Quietly. Hope you dig it.